This is the video journal for week 7 for EDUU 675, assessment of students with autism spectrum disorders. And this particular video journal is sort of a wrap up of the SLP interview and the functional behavior assessment. Two things kind of stick out for me from those. For the SLP interview, I think the most important thing was just the collaborative nature of that process, and getting feedback from a speech language pathologist in terms of some of the things that she saw in autism students. I think that as far as I'm concerned, though, I think it's pretty enlightening because I've never, well, let me not say never, I've worked maybe one time with a speech language person. And that was with an autistic child, but that was kind of like at the elementary level, and it was minimal interaction with that. But this interview taught me a lot about why we collaborate, particularly when it comes to assessing individuals on the spectrum. The same thing holds true, and I think that the collaborative piece is the link between the SLP interview and the FBA. And as far as I'm concerned, the FBA, I think, taught me a lot in terms of kind of what to look for in certain students. And the student that I worked with is a high functioning autistic individual. I think that the fact that all behavior has meaning is specifically important because sometimes I think teachers have a tendency to overlook certain behaviors that, how can I phrase this? I think that certain sort of the repetitive behaviors that you typically see with autistic students, most people tend to overlook that and not necessarily analyze why that behavior is occurring. Just conducting the FBA was valuable because it helped to piece together the aspects of the environment that contributed to the behaviors that were observed. Again, the reinforcement of the collaboration part, the interview process, I think, was particularly valuable for me because it's a student that I don't see because I don't teach first period math. I teach periods 2 through 6. But I just think it gave me a different perspective on the observed behavior and seeing it from an inclusion classroom perspective, because I'm a separate classroom. I just think that seeing an ASD student in a different academic setting said a lot in terms of what certain teachers look for based on their training. Typically, gen ed teachers are not trained to observe or notice or even assess autistic behaviors. But I just think in conjunction with that, the collaborative part, the assessment itself, I think was helpful in determining, what the reasons were for the behaviors that I saw. And they sort of, I guess, funneled into two areas, and they're pretty typical: avoidance and attention seeking. And I wish that I'd had more time to observe, but I didn't. But the process in general, I think, was very helpful, both on the SLP interview and the FBA. And I'm certain that it's something that I will be utilizing from this point forward. And I've enjoyed this class so far, and it's ending, and I look forward to the next 2 modules.